The South Africa's 2025 presidency of the G20 World's Most Advanced Economy formally ends on Sunday as the leaders of the Group of 20 closes their summit with a formal declaration, but without the United States in attendance. The summit provides South Africa an opportunity to deepen its cycle of investment and bilateral relations within the G20 economies under the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. The G20 conference also draws attention to energy and climate change in Africa under the G20 frameworks. Joining me to discuss and review the G20 Summit and the key takeaways for Africa is the Executive Chairman of the African Energy Week, NJ Ayuk. A good evening to you in Johannesburg, and thank you for making the time on the show tonight. It's good to see you again.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you for your time. I believe some congratulations are in order, isn't it? In order for South Africa, for hosting the G20 presidency and the Leaders Summit for the first time on the African soil, isn't it? What do you think?
I think South Africa did an amazing job in hosting this in Africa for the first time, and I think it was well curated. Everything went really well, but what is even more important is that, yes, an African nation that took an African message to the world, and they did that. But it also was the inclusiveness of getting many African countries, African leaders, business community to be part of this and really send an African message to the G20 and engagement in other things. So I think it was a huge success, and congratulations, South Africa, for actually doing this.
And I was watching all of that. Now, chat to me on the theme for the G20 South Africa presidency: solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Do you think these three priority areas covered what are important, things that are important for Africa at this time? Do you think so?
I think so. We in a world where there is so much, we're not so interconnected. We see a lot of geopolitical strife. We see a lot of issues that we as Africans really need at this time to see how we deal with issues around debt relief. We see just energy transition financing. We're seeing climate change, energy poverty. But we also see in a world that is so disconnected, and it's time to give the global South a voice within this discussion and say, take a minute, take a stop. Let's get back to an era of multilateralism and let's see how that works. And we've seen that whenever we come together as a people, we end up having solutions that really come out and help poor people and also really lift people up. But I think South Africa had a great team. Some people did not really like the theme, but I think this team was globally accepted until some others disagreed with it. And I think it was very right to send an African message, what Africans really want, and it should be respected.
Solidarity that we need amongst ourselves for intra-Africa trade, equality between the haves and the have-nots, energy poverty on the continent, and sustainability. Do you think they all flow together?
They do, and I think when you put that together, then it comes to a just energy transition, because that is really where we stand as Africa. It will be very wrong to have a G20 hosted in Africa and then you address the issues of the wealthy nations and what they want. That's like colonization gone G20, rather than us sitting here in Africa and really address those issues of Africans. So if you're going to host it on African soil, you're going to have to talk about Africans. You think the G20 is going to be hosted in the United States next year? It's going to be an America First G20, and I think it's a little bit uncivilized to hope that you would host this in Africa and let's focus on the needs of those in the global north and the wealthy nations without the people in this great continent of ours. And it was the right thing to do, and we're fully behind it.
Do you think that the G20 summit achieved its purpose and objectives even with the United States abstaining from the meeting?
In a sense, it did. They had a lot of discussion, a lot of pledges. First of all, the Troika worked very well together before the abstention, but also there were many other G20 members that came together to continue to foster this dialogue. Don't forget the G20 was started with the United States. George W. Bush really was the father of this. So America has always been part of this, and America will continue to be part of this. You just had a distraction right now that kept them away, and that's fine. But the other nations continued. And you could see from the statements coming from the French president or that of the UK prime minister or others from Asian countries, be it India or China,
Yes.
they all celebrating and congratulating the really good work that was done by South Africa. And the outcome that came out of this were the themes, but also the proposals. But now we need to see action being put to it.
Yes, I saw a very strong presence from the European Union in terms of the countries within the EU. Ursula, the president of the European Commission, the Narendra Modi, the French president as well, Nigeria's vice president was there, and a lot of others. So looks like a very good outing for South Africa. So let's talk about South Africa itself. What are the benefits of the G20 presidency and the summit hosting to the country? NJ?
I think it put some light on South Africa to really look at addressing some of its key challenges, sometimes domestic policy, infrastructure deficits, but also there was a lot of discussions with the business community. Don't forget, before you had the G20, you had the B20, where a lot of engagement with the business communities and pledges and commitments to fund, finance, and engage in new kind of joint ventures with business in the country and across the continent. That is the key benefit. We don't just want to have another talk shop where people talk and make pledges, but I thought I was more interested in the deals that were signed and the pledges and new projects that were coming up. We saw big commitments coming in with $15 billion on EU funding on clean energy. I don't think they would do that. They always misrepresent what they do. But there were a lot of commitments that went into oil and gas, commitments to oil and gas. I think that's really because all people always keep their promises, but then also things around infrastructure, which I think it's going to happen. I like those ones around infrastructure, oil and gas. The ones around green energy, I think they're doing it for the show. It's not going to happen, and South Africa is going to move forward with gas development.
Yeah, energy investment, the G20 framework for energy was a center focus. Your advocacy organization held a forum on the sidelines of that Friday before the G20 Leaders Summit itself. What are the highlights of that forum? How does it align with the G20 framework on energy, just energy transition for Africa, having at least two ministers from South Africa in the room for minerals and petroleum, as well as that of electricity and energy?
You could have called that the Oil 20. It was very, very important for us to do that because we really had to get African priorities, African voice, African ministers. Beyond the South African minister, we saw great energy leaders coming from Nigeria, like Kola Karim, Nzan from Levine Energy, and many others participating. But Africans coming from all across to really not just send a message, but also discuss issues that comes with African investment. We could see Africans signing deals together with their big counterparts. But even what was more bigger there, we saw a clear commitment around clean cooking. And that's something that is really, really important for us to pay attention. 900 million without access to clean cooking. Africans were really focused on that and really driving that. South Africa itself and its government were more committed in seeing that we drive up energy in not just in South Africa, but in the continent, establish regional partnerships, move up gas in Mozambique, but also deal with domestic gas in South Africa that has been bogged down by lawfare coming from NGOs from most Western countries. So we really felt that the Energy Investment Forum that we had during the G20, it was right on point. Yes, some people don't accept that because it was not more about solar and wind and renewable focus, but clean cooking is important, so we don't care how you get it. We just need to get our people out of energy poverty, and also getting energy to those that need it the most in our continent should be our number one priority.
Interesting. So South Africa headlines that particular forum. So South Africa is looking to see GDP growth of between 5 to 8% on oil and gas exploration activities within the region. How much progress do you think the country is making in that regard?
The country has lifted its moratorium on shale, so we're going to frack everywhere in the Karoo Basin to really get more oil there, but they need to get some regulation passed in place, deal with EIA, so you move a lot of exploration activity faster and not delay. It shouldn't take so long to approve an EIA and the time you need to carry out an exploration program. So they're putting out policies and regulations that would deal with those roadblocks. But domestic gas is really important. And I tell you this, Namibia is just 20% of the Orange Basin, 80% of the Orange Basin in South Africa. A lot of discoveries are happening in the Namibian side. So South Africa's side is being stuck with lawsuits, but they're turning that around. And gas discoveries and development here, Block 11 that was owned by Total, they did a write-off. Now other parties are going to come in to really drive that up. So you're going to see a lot of gas development in South Africa. That is really going to drive that. But you know what was even beautiful? You're going to see a lot of Nigerian and African involvement in some of this exploration activity because they have experience, they have participated, but you're also seeing where you're seeing African businesses being given a chance to compete and to do very well together with international businesses. So I'm really excited about this next phase for South Africa and what it means into its energy and mining industry, and also looking at how they're going to deal with beneficiation of minerals. That's something we don't pay a lot of attention on, to really ensure that we create more value and improve how we process and get benefits out of this. You know, we ship stuff outside, it comes right back to us, and we're paying big money for it. But you know, boys, and I tell you this, a strong commitment to markets, a strong commitment to limited governments, a strong commitment to individual liberty, and a strong commitment to protecting private property. That kind of stuff is really important. We realize that the fiscals in South Africa and around Africa have to be improved. Taxes have to be cut to get to a point where it's very good. So I think this was an excellent outing for the G20, but for Africa itself, for African business, we need to now push for people to live up to their commitments and get the results so that African business can thrive at this time. Sometimes we worry so much about international and big businesses, we don't pay attention on making sure that African business can thrive within this continent, because they are going to be our first defenders for our development.
Great job there by South Africa, President Ramaphosa and the rest of those who put those meetings together. 133 meetings, by the way, for the presidency. That's quite a lot over the past 1 year. Thank you so much, as always, for those insights here on the Arise Exchange. Have a great evening there in Johannesburg. NJ Ayuk, the Executive Chairman at the African Energy Chamber.